In my last video, I built this application using GitHub Copilot and it worked surprisingly well. So I wondered, can I build the same app using local AI only? No cloud, no APIs, just my laptop and a lot of RAM. So I tried building the entire application locally, planning, coding and breaking things. Here is what actually happened. In my first attempt, I used Ollama with two models, Qwen 3.5 and Qwen 3 Coder. 3.5 for analysis, planning, and 3 for implementation. 3 Coder for implementation inside Visual Studio Code and GitHub Copilot. But very quickly, I ran into a problem. The response was very slow. Sometimes the request was incomplete. Sometimes the request would fail completely. The model would start generating token and stop in middle, which meant code response was incomplete. At that point, it became clear that setup was not going to work reliably. So I changed the approach. I had previously noticed that LM Studio was faster than Ollama when running local models. So I decided to switch. I loaded the two models, Qwen 3.5 35 billion and Qwen 3.0 Coder 30 billion. And my setup was like this. Computer, MacBook Pro M4 Max, 48 GB. LM tool was LM Studio. Coding tool was Visual Studio Code with Continue extension. The idea was split responsibility. Qwen 3.5, 35 billion for Qwen 3 Coder for implementation or writing the code. That sounds like a great idea, but again, reality was different. The biggest challenge wasn't just the models, it was the tooling around them. I started seeing the several issues. First, the AI is struggling to create a proper project structures. Second, it would generate instruction for creating file, but the file was never actually created. Even when I use apply changes, it was the extension sometimes overwrote the file currently opened instead of creating a new file, which meant the only option that manually create the file manually and paste the generated content. And the problem didn't stop there. The missing namespaces, incorrect imports, broken references. Even after compiling, the model often couldn't compile properly. Even after compiling, model couldn't often identify what went wrong. After a lot of efforts, the project still wasn't running. So once again, I changed the approach. This time I replaced the extension and used Cline or Cline. Compared to previous tools, Cline or Cline had much richer functionality. The planning stage worked quite well. The AI could read the project requirement and was able to generate a decent project development plan. But during the implementation stage, the problem came back. And then when I realized something important, the Qwen 3 Coder model works fine with small instructions, but when given large context with architecture file and the product detail files, it gets confused easily. So I made one final change. Instead of using separate model, I decided to use Qwen 3.5 model, 35 billion model for both implementation and development. Instead of asking AI to build everything at once, I started giving it small instructions. I implemented the project in phases. Each phase had clear requirements, well-defined architecture, and specific tasks for the model to stay focused. The process was still slow. My system's memory was almost used fully most of the time, but finally application started working, and by the end the project was running. Despite the challenges, local AI has some advantages. First, privacy. Your code never leave your system, your computer. No API keys and subscription. It means you can run the local models as much as time you want. And third, no dependency on the internet. It remains local, you can work offline. Where local model struggles. But local AI also has limitations. First, you need a good hardware. Running large model required good amount of memory and hardware power and compute power. Second, the performance depends on heavily on your system. Smaller models simply cannot compete with the online models on the cloud or frontier models. Third, because of the memory limitation, the local model struggle with the large context, and sometimes it lost the context, confused. Fourth, the tooling ecosystem is still evolving. And finally, you still need to guide AI to work locally. If someone says local AI model cannot be used for development, not entirely correct. Absolutely, they can be used, but the developer still need to do heavy lifting. Local models are good for generate basic code, write test cases, and automate the repetitive task, but still require human guidance for the more complex project activity. But they still require human guidance for project architecture and heavy lifting and complex decision. In many ways, local AI works like a junior developer. It can help you build your project, but you still need to guide it. Unless you have access to large AI server at your home with much larger, unless you have access to powerful AI server with larger models, with much larger models. And that was my experiment building application with local AI. And that is my experiment with developing application with local AI models. If you want to see more experience with local AI development, please make sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching and see you in next video.